When my niece first started competing in junior showmanship with her golden retriever, I figured picking out a show lead would be simple. I mean, how complicated could it be compared to the aquarium gear I'm used to researching? Turns out, very complicated. After watching her struggle through her first few shows with a cheap nylon lead that bunched up in her hands and completely threw off her posture, I went down the rabbit hole. I'm Kenji Takahashi, and I brought the same obsessive research energy to show leads that I usually reserve for building reef tanks.
You're listening to the Pet Parent Podcast. Quick heads up before we dive in. Everything you're about to hear, all the research, the data, the actual content, that's been written and verified by real people who know their stuff. The voice you're hearing, though, that's AI generated. Just wanted to be upfront about that. Anyway, I really appreciate you being here, whether you're a regular listener or this is your first episode. New episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we cover the whole range of pet care topics. Today, we're talking about something I never expected to research, dog show leads. Let me tell you how I ended up down this rabbit hole. Here's the short version if you're in a hurry. You want a thin, soft leather or braided nylon show lead that basically disappears in your hand and lets you stack your dog with one hand. Most handlers go with something between 4 and 6 feet in length, depending on the breed. But the details matter enormously, especially when you're still learning how to move around the ring and you don't need your equipment working against you. Now, let's talk about what to actually look for in a dog showmanship leash. Material and grip feel are huge. I've learned from maintaining delicate equipment over the years, whether it's precision dosing pumps or show leads, that the material makes or breaks the whole experience. Leather show leads are traditional for good reason. They soften with use, they develop a grip pattern that's personalized to your hand, and they create very little visual bulk in the ring. Kangaroo leather is the premium choice because it offers an incredible strength-to-diameter ratio, though you'll pay more for it. Cowhide leather works beautifully for beginners and softens up nicely after a few shows. What I've found works well for a lot of junior handlers is braided nylon. It gives you consistent grip even when your hands are sweaty, and trust me, they will be sweaty during your first few shows. Unlike my early aquarium mistakes where I just buy the cheapest version of everything, I learned that show leads need to feel comfortable when you're holding them for extended periods. You'll be managing this lead while you're moving, stacking, and presenting your dog, sometimes for 20 or 30 minutes straight during larger classes. The diameter matters more than you'd think. Most show leads range from 3/16 of an inch to 1/4 inch thick. Thinner leads give you more control and less visual distraction, but they require better hand conditioning. Junior handlers often do better starting with 1/4 inch leads that won't dig into their palms during those inevitable nervous grip moments. Understanding how canine training aids work helps clarify how show leads are different from everyday training equipment. They're designed for presentation, not correction. Moving on to length and adjustability. Standard show leads run 4 to 6 feet, but the right length depends on your height compared to your dog's size. My niece is 5'2" and shows a golden. She needs every bit of that 6-foot length to maintain proper posture while keeping appropriate distance during the down and back. A junior handler showing a Pembroke Welsh Corgi might work better with a 4-foot lead to avoid having too much material to manage. Adjustable leads with sliding stops offer versatility as handlers grow or work with multiple dogs, though they add a slight bulk element that some judges find visually distracting. Fixed loop leads create cleaner lines but require precise sizing. I've seen experienced handlers own multiple leads in different lengths for different presentation scenarios. It's kind of like how I keep different nets for different tank maintenance tasks. It seems excessive until you understand the specific applications.
For beginners, I'd lean toward a 5 or 6 foot fixed or minimally adjustable lead. You could always size down as you develop preferences, but starting with too little length creates frustrating handling limitations that make the learning curve even steeper. Here's something that surprised me when I first started researching. The lead color should complement or contrast with your dog's coat in ways that minimize visual interruption of the dog's outline. Dark leads for light-colored dogs, lighter leads for dark dogs. It's the presentation equivalent of choosing background plants that make fish colors pop, rather than creating visual competition. That said, for showmanship classes, where the judge is evaluating the handler rather than the dog, some handlers prefer leads that create slight contrast, so their hand positioning is clearly visible. The comparison between dog show leads and training leashes really highlights these nuanced choices. Training equipment prioritizes function over form, while show leads have to balance both. Metal hardware should be minimal and discreet. Heavy snap bolts create bulk at the collar area that disrupts the dog's neck presentation. Many show leads use tiny O-rings or sewn-in stops rather than bulky clasps, though this requires proper collar coordination. Junior handlers starting out often appreciate leads with small snap closures for quick changes between classes, even if they're not the most refined option. Let's talk about construction quality and durability. I learned my lesson about buying cheap equipment after my third aquarium overflow disaster. With show leads, reinforced stitching and proper leather treatment make the difference between a lead that lasts years and one that falls apart after a few shows. Check the connection points where the loop meets the main lead where any hardware attaches for double stitching or reinforced wrapping. Braided nylon leads should have tight, even braiding without loose sections that'll catch on your fingers or the dog's coat. Leather leads should be evenly dyed, which is important for presentation, and treated to resist moisture from your hands and the occasional rainy outdoor show. Some premium leads come with conditioning instructions, similar to breaking in baseball gloves. It's a process that creates a personalized fit. My niece's first lead cost around $15 and literally fell apart at the stitching during her third show. That created a panicked scrambling moment that threw off her entire run. Her replacement, a mid-range braided nylon from a reputable show supplier, has held up through an entire season of weekly handling classes and monthly shows. Sometimes paying a bit more up front saves you from learning equipment lessons at exactly the wrong moment. That's true whether you're keeping a reef tank or showing dogs. Now, breed-specific considerations. Just like choosing appropriate fish for your tank size, matching your lead to your breed's showing style matters enormously. Toy breeds often show on ultra-thin leads, sometimes called show strings, that practically disappear in photos. These require excellent hand control that beginners often don't have yet. Sporting and working breeds typically show on standard quarter-inch leather or braided leads that provide secure control during energetic presentations. Large and giant breeds may require slightly wider leads purely for handler comfort during extended holding, though you'll see experienced handlers managing mastiffs on surprisingly delicate leads. The difference is conditioning and technique, something beginners shouldn't try to skip ahead on. Start with equipment that forgives learning curves, not equipment that demands mastery. If you're working with a breed that requires specific stacking techniques, consider how your lead choice affects your ability to practice those positions. Some leads create better one-handed control for breeds requiring manual front leg placement, while others distribute across both hands more comfortably for natural stacking positions. All right, let's get into our top picks for dog showmanship leashes. First up, the Mendota Products British-style slip lead. Check the show notes for a link to the current price. This has become something of a standard in junior showmanship circles, and after handling one myself, I understand why. This braided nylon lead offers consistent grip without the break-in period leather requires, which matters when you're learning handling mechanics and you don't need your equipment changing feel every few weeks. The British-style construction creates a slightly wider, flatter braid than standard round leads, distributing pressure across your palm rather than creating a single pressure line. Here's what works about it. It has extremely consistent texture and grip even when wet. It's available in 3/8 inch, 1/4 inch, and 1/8 inch diameters to match handler experience and dog size. It comes in over 20 colors for breed-appropriate coordination. It's machine washable, something my niece appreciated after a muddy outdoor show, and it holds up to weekly handling class use without fraying or stretching. The downsides, the braided texture, while comfortable, creates slightly more visual bulk than flat leather. The color can fade with heavy sun exposure and repeated washing, and the slip loop takes practice to size correctly for quick adjustments. Next, the Resco Professional Show Lead. Check the show notes for a link to the current price. This represents what I'd call the intermediate step between beginner-friendly nylon and professional leather. This lead uses a combination of premium leather and precisely sized metal hardware to create a clean, traditional presentation that works across most breed rings. What I've found particularly clever is how Resco balances grip comfort with slightly wider leather at the handler end, with visual refinement using a narrower profile near the collar connection. What I like, the leather softens beautifully after 4 or 5 shows while maintaining structural integrity. The small, discreet O-ring connection creates minimal collar bulk. It's available in lengths from 4 to 6 feet for different handler dog size combinations. It has that traditional appearance that judges expect to see in the ring, and it comes in basic colors like black, brown, and tan that coordinate with most coat colors. The cons: it requires proper leather conditioning every few months to prevent drying and cracking. The narrower sections can create pressure points for handlers with sweaty or sensitive hands. And it's more expensive than synthetic options, usually around $25 to $35 depending on length. Moving on to the Coastal Pet Show Dog Snap Leash. Check the show notes for a link to the current price. For absolute beginners, especially younger junior handlers, this offers a forgiving introduction to show lead mechanics. Unlike slip leads that require precise loop sizing, this lead features a small snap closure that attaches to your show collar independently. It's training wheels for ring presentation, and there's no shame in using equipment that builds confidence while you're learning. My niece used one for her first 3 shows before transitioning to a slip lead once she mastered ring movement patterns. The pros: no loop sizing stress, you just snap and go. The nylon construction stays soft without a break-in period. It's very affordable, typically under $15 for handlers still determining if showing is a long-term commitment. It's available in narrow widths, 3/16 of an inch, that create clean lines despite the snap hardware, and it's easy to switch between dogs during multi-dog handling practice. The downsides: the snap creates visible hardware bulk that more experienced handlers avoid. It's not appropriate for higher-level competition where equipment refinement matters. It can catch on coat during stacking with long-haired breeds, and you get slightly less precise control than with properly fitted slip leads. Now, when you're ready to invest in premium equipment, and I mean ready, as in you've already completed a full show season, and you know this is a sustained commitment, the Platinum Pets Kangaroo Leather Show Lead represents the kind of quality that lasts years. Check the show notes for a link to the current price. Kangaroo leather is ridiculously strong relative to its diameter, allowing ultra-thin profiles down to 1/8 of an inch that practically disappear visually while still providing excellent control. It's the show lead equivalent of investing in a high-quality protein skimmer after you've proven you can maintain water chemistry basics. What works? Incredibly thin profile creates minimal visual distraction in presentation. Kangaroo leather stays soft and flexible even with irregular conditioning. It develops a personalized grip pattern that molds to your hand over time. It has a professional appearance appropriate for national-level competition, and it's surprisingly comfortable despite the thin diameter once your hands are conditioned. The cons, it's expensive, typically $40 to $60 depending on length and hardware. It requires conditioned hands. Beginners will find it uncomfortable for extended holding. The thin profile means dropped loops or tangles require careful unwinding, and there are limited color options, usually just natural tan or black. Let me tell you about the Chris Christensen Obedience Martingale show lead. Check the show notes for a link to the current price. This bridges the gap between training equipment and show presentation in ways that work particularly well for handlers managing energetic or easily distracted dogs during junior showmanship. The martingale design provides gentle correction capability without the bulk of standard training collars, which matters when you're trying to maintain ring decorum with an adolescent dog that spots another golden across the ring and wants to say hello. The pros: martingale action provides subtle control for exuberant dogs without harsh corrections. It has premium nylon construction with reinforced stitching at stress points. It's available in sophisticated color combinations, including two-tone options that work across coat colors. It's wide enough, 3/8 of an inch, to be comfortable for handlers still building hand conditioning. And the stopping mechanism is smooth enough to be nearly silent during adjustments. The cons: it's expensive, typically $30 to $35, around $30 to $35. The martingale hardware, while refined, still creates more visual bulk than simple slip leads. It requires understanding of proper martingale fitting to avoid over-tightening, and it's not appropriate for breeds where absolute minimal equipment is the presentation standard. Finally, the Hermsprenger Ultra Plus Show Lead. Check the show notes for a link to the current price. For handlers dealing with particularly strong or high-drive dogs, think young German Shepherds or energetic sporting breeds, this offers control without sacrificing show-appropriate appearance. Hermsprenger built their reputation on training equipment, and this lead brings that engineering precision to the show ring. What I appreciate is how they've created something that handles like quality training equipment, but looks refined enough for competition. What I like: exceptional durability. The chain portion is practically indestructible. It provides more control than standard show leads for powerful breeds. The leather sections are pre-softened and ready to use immediately. It works well as a dual-purpose training and showing lead for beginning handlers, and it's available in sizes appropriate for everything from terriers to giant breeds. The downsides: the chain section creates noise during movement that some judges find distracting. It has heavier overall weight than fabric or leather-only leads. It's more visually obvious than traditional show leads and not appropriate for breeds where minimal equipment is expected. And the combination of materials, leather and chain, requires different cleaning approaches. Let's tackle some frequently asked questions. What's the difference between a show lead and a regular leash for dog showmanship? A show lead is specifically designed for ring presentation rather than everyday walking or training. In my experience, helping my niece prepare for junior showmanship, the biggest differences come down to material thickness, length optimization, and hardware minimization. Show leads typically use very thin leather or braided materials, 3/16 to a 1/4 inch diameter, that create minimal visual bulk when you're presenting your dog to judges. Regular leashes prioritize durability and often use 1/2 inch or wider materials with substantial clips and hardware. Show leads eliminate unnecessary components. You won't find padded handles, D-rings for waist bag attachments, or reflective stitching, because everything is about creating clean, uninterrupted lines that showcase the dog rather than the equipment. The length typically ranges from 4 to 6 feet to allow proper handler positioning during gaiting and stacking, compared to the standard 6-foot walking leash. Most importantly, show leads use slip-style or minimal hardware connections that can be quickly adjusted with one hand while you're managing your dog's position with the other. That takes practice, but becomes essential during conformation showing where timing and precision matter. Technically, yes, but I wouldn't recommend it for the same reason I don't suggest new aquarists start with advanced reef systems. You'll be fighting your equipment instead of learning fundamentals. Beginners typically benefit from leads with slightly wider diameters, quarter-inch rather than eighth-inch, because thinner leads require conditioned hands and refined grip technique that takes months to develop. My niece started with a quarter-inch braided nylon lead that felt comfortable during her entire first season of handling classes, then transitioned to a thinner leather lead once she'd built up hand strength and developed consistent grip mechanics. Ultra-thin kangaroo leather leads that experienced handlers prefer will dig into unconditioned palms during extended holding, creating discomfort that translates to tense shoulders and poor ring posture. Similarly, slip leads require precise loop sizing skills that beginners often struggle with while managing everything else happening in the ring. Starting with a show lead that has a small snap closure or slightly wider grip diameter lets you focus on footwork, timing, and dog management without your equipment creating additional challenges. You can always upgrade to more refined equipment as your skills develop, and you'll appreciate the difference more when you've earned the technique to use it properly. What length show lead should junior handlers use? The right length depends on the handler's height relative to their dog's size, and I've found this is one of those specs that actually matters in real-world use. As a general guideline, the lead should allow the handler to maintain proper upright posture while keeping appropriate distance from the dog during gaiting, which typically means a 4 to 6 foot lead for most handler-dog combinations. Junior handlers showing large dogs like Golden Retrievers, German Shepherds, or Labrador Retrievers usually work best with 6-foot leads that provide enough length to present the dog during the down and back without the handler hunching forward or restricting the dog's natural movement. For small and toy breeds, think Miniature Pinschers, Papillons, or Yorkshire Terriers, junior handlers often prefer 4-foot leads because excess material becomes a management problem when you're already dealing with a tiny dog that's moving quickly. Medium-sized breeds like Cocker Spaniels or Beagles typically work well with 5-foot leads. What I've seen work for handlers managing multiple breeds, or who are still growing, which describes most junior handlers, is having one 6-foot adjustable lead that can be shortened as needed, though this adds slight hardware bulk that becomes less ideal as you advance. The real test is whether you can comfortably gait your dog, stack it with proper handler distance, and perform all the showmanship techniques your instructor teaches without the lead feeling too long, causing tangling or creating excess material, or too short, pulling you off balance or restricting the dog's movement. How do you break in a leather show lead? Breaking in a leather show lead follows similar principles to conditioning a baseball glove, and I've learned there's a right way that creates a personalized tool and a wrong way that damages the leather permanently. Start by applying a quality leather conditioner. Nothing fancy, just standard products designed for tack or work gloves work perfectly to the entire lead. Pay special attention to the areas where your hand will grip most frequently. Work the conditioner in with your fingers, really massage it into the leather fibers, then let it absorb for several hours or overnight. The next step is simply using the lead during practice sessions, rather than trying to accelerate the break-in artificially. I've seen people try everything from soaking leads in water to running them through their hands repeatedly while watching TV, and most of these approaches create weak spots or inconsistent softening. Over the first 4 or 5 practice sessions or shows, the leather will naturally soften and mold to your grip pattern, developing what feels like custom-made comfort in the sections you hold most. You'll want to condition the lead every month or so during active showing seasons, more frequently if you're dealing with particularly dry climates or indoor show venues with heavy air conditioning. What you're avoiding is over-conditioning, which makes leather too soft and reduces its strength, or under-conditioning, which leads to cracking and brittle sections that'll fail at the worst possible moment. The properly broken-in show lead should feel substantial enough to provide secure control, but soft enough that you can hold it for 20 to 30 minutes without developing pressure points or hand fatigue. It's similar to how I condition my hands to handle delicate aquarium plants without crushing them, but with enough firmness to work efficiently. Should you use different show leads for different breeds or show levels? In my experience, watching handlers across different levels, from first-time juniors to professional handlers managing multiple breed specialties, the answer is eventually yes, though beginners shouldn't worry about this during their first season. Different breeds have different presentation standards that extend to equipment choices. Toy breeds often show on ultra-thin show strings that practically disappear visually, while working and herding breeds typically use standard-width leather or braided leads that provide secure control during more dynamic presentations. The coat color coordination matters too. You'll see handlers who compete across multiple breeds keeping different colored leads to create appropriate contrast or complementary tones, depending on whether they're showing a black standard poodle or a Wheaton soft-coated Wheaton Terrier that day. Regarding show levels, there's definitely equipment refinement that happens as you move from local match shows to AKC-pointed conformation shows to national specialty competitions. Beginners can absolutely use quality mid-range equipment across all these levels, but as you develop skills and judges begin evaluating finer details of presentation, you'll likely invest in more refined leads with minimal hardware and cleaner lines. I've also seen handlers keep a practice lead that's more forgiving and comfortable for weekly training sessions, and a show lead that's thinner and more refined for actual competition days. This is similar to how I maintain both inexpensive nets for messy tank maintenance and pristine specimen nets for moving delicate fish during aquascaping. Different tools for different levels of precision. That said, a quality quarter-inch leather or braided show lead will serve a beginning junior handler perfectly well across breeds and show levels for at least their first full year of competing. Trying to optimize equipment before you've mastered basic handling is putting the cart before the horse. So here's the verdict. After researching show leads with the same intensity I brought to figuring out protein skimmer ratings when I started reef keeping, I've realized the best dog showmanship leash for beginners prioritizes comfort and forgiveness over visual refinement. My top recommendation for most junior handlers starting out is the Mendota British-style slip lead in quarter-inch diameter. It offers consistent grip without a break-in period, holds up to enthusiastic beginner handling, and works across most breed presentations while you're developing fundamental skills. Once you've completed a full season and built up hand conditioning, transitioning to the Resco Professional Show lead gives you that traditional leather feel with proven durability. The equipment matters, but it's secondary to practice time and proper instruction. I've watched my niece transform from a nervous first-timer struggling with lead management to a confident handler who barely thinks about her equipment because she's put in the hours. Get a quality mid-range lead that feels comfortable in your hand, spend your energy on mastering handling techniques, and upgrade your equipment as your skills demand it, rather than hoping expensive gear will compensate for practice you haven't put in yet. That approach works whether you're building aquarium systems or showing dogs. Fundamentals first, refinement second. That wraps up this episode of the Pet Parent Podcast. Thanks for listening. We put out new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so there's always something coming down the pipeline. If you found this episode helpful, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you leave us a 5-star rating and maybe write a quick review. That's honestly how other people find the show, and it makes a real difference in who gets to hear this stuff. And hey, go ahead and hit subscribe or follow so you get a notification the second new episodes go live. I'll catch you next time.